In this video, we're going to watch a British journalist named Louise Goodall go head-to-head with Israel and Netanyahu's spokesperson, Alon Levy. As usual, we're going to play the full clip first, and then I'll share my thoughts and perspective with you at the end. Guys, this discussion gets really intense, so make sure you stick around and watch the entire thing.
Has Israel
it's a theocratic dictatorship.
I don't dispute
official
that.
Slogan is death to Israel.
I don't dispute that. Well, let's talk now to Alon Levy, former Israeli government spokesperson, joining us live from Tel Aviv on the show this morning. Alon Levy, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Let's not pay too much attention to the lectures the Iranian foreign minister gives about the UN Charter and about international law. We know that the Iranians are not too fond of keeping it themselves, but perhaps we should listen to what the UN Secretary General has had to say this morning when he said, Antonio Guterres, that this is a dangerous escalation in a region already on the edge and a direct threat to international peace and security. Why is he wrong?
I think he should say thank you to the United States and Israel for saving the world from the specter of an Iranian nuclear bomb. Iran was weaponizing its nuclear weapons program. Diplomacy had failed to stop it from building enough highly enriched uranium for 10 nuclear weapons. And Israel and the United States have both done the world an immense service at immense risk to themselves.
What is your evidence for any of those claims?
Israeli intelligence understood that Iran was weaponizing its uranium. But it's worse than that, Lewis, because the Iranian regime, according to the IAEA, already had enough highly enriched uranium for 10 nuclear bombs. That's not Israel. That's the IAEA. There is no possible civilian justification for having uranium at 60% enrichment, which is 99% of the way to weapons grade. Certainly none for having it inside an IRGC base buried deep under a mountain. When the Iranian regime has an open policy of death to Israel and is building the weapons to bring death to Israel, Israel has stepped in to remove that existential threat.
You cite the IAEA. And they themselves have said, as you'll know, this is the IAEA's Rafael Grossi, that's Secretary General. We do not have any proof of any systematic effort by the Iranians to move into a nuclear weapon. Indeed, he said in an interview with CNN just in the last few days that those claiming, which I would assume he would include you in, given what you've just said, those claiming to know exact details about Iran moving toward a nuclear weapon are engaging in speculation. So you're citing the IAEA, but there's a Director General of the IAEA saying that you're wrong.
Lewis, Iran has been blocking IAEA inspections. Even if Iran had a nuclear weapon with ACME written on it, like in the cartoons we used to watch as kids, the IAEA would miss it. But a little bit of humility
you just
here,
cited the IAEA.
The Syrian regime, Lewis, the IAEA knows that Iran has 400 kilos of highly enriched uranium.
The IAEA correct when they agree with you, but not when they don't.
The IAEA does not have the ability to penetrate the Iranian regime in the way that Israeli intelligence
Then why are you citing them when they support
Lewis,
what you agree with?
Because the evidence is there for everyone to see.
Right.
The weaponization is not something the IAEA would pick up on because its inspectors aren't allowed into Iran's facilities. Lewis, a little bit of humility. In 2007, the Syrian regime was building a nuclear reactor. The United States didn't know about it until Israel told it, and the United Kingdom didn't know about it until Israel bombed it. But the red line of a decision to build nuclear weapons is already too late. You can criticize Israel for acting too late, definitely not too early, because there is no wiggle room to wake up one morning and find out that the Iranian regime has already assembled a nuclear bomb, with, I'll remind you, no possible civilian justification for 400 kilos of enriched uranium at 60%.
So we just have to trust you. We just have to trust your government.
Is military.
We just have to trust your government.
Lewis, the only possible reason to have 400 kilos of highly enriched uranium is because it's a nuclear weapons.
Do you understand?
Program. The only possible reason to dig a nuclear facility under a mountain inside a revolutionary
But the US itself
is
said,
because it's a nuclear weapons
Tulsi
program.
Gabbard, as you know, itself said, no one may doubt that the Iranians may have nefarious intentions. But the big question here is as to how imminent it was that they may obtain a nuclear weapon. And as you yourself know, Tulsi Gabbard herself had said that there was no prospect of that happening imminently. So ultimately, you started your answer to my question by saying Israeli intelligence thinks this. You're asking us to believe your government and what it says. Do you understand why many people in the UK and around the world, given the Israeli government actions since what has happened with Gaza in particular, have trouble to credit that idea?
Lewis, the Iranian regime has a nuclear weapons program because it has enriched uranium to a level that can only be justified for nuclear weapons.
Those claiming to know exact details about Iran moving toward a nuclear weapon are engaging in speculation. That is what the director of the IAEA has said.
Because Israel has no room for wriggle room. The Iranian
so we have to trust you.
Is openly sworn to Israel's destruction. During the negotiations, the Iranian regime leader was tweeting that Israel must be destroyed while enriching uranium, that the only possible thing you can do with it is nuclear weapons. We don't have the luxury to wait to find out that tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they're going to have a nuclear weapon. Israel is operating here at the last possible minute because the Iranian regime was enriching uranium to a level that could only be used for nuclear weapons. And I think the United Kingdom, whose approach to diplomacy has failed, should show a little bit of humility and thank its ally in the Middle East for eliminating the threat of Iranian nuclear weapons.
Do you understand that that's rather awkward, given that if your Prime Minister arrived in this country, we would be actually duty-bound to arrest him? And indeed, the British government has imposed sanctions on two of the most senior members of your government for their actions and words with regards to Gaza. Can you understand that, therefore, many people listening to you saying we should accept what Benjamin Netanyahu and his government says rather struggle with that notion?
Lewis, can you understand that the United Kingdom has rendered itself diplomatically irrelevant in the entire Iranian nuclear talks? Yesterday, the E3 tried to resume negotiations with Iran, and it asked for guarantees that its intentions were peaceful. The Iranian regime said that was unrealistic, and that's because the Iranian regime's intentions are death to Israel and death to the United States. This regime, Lewis, has been waging a war of aggression against Israel since the October 7th massacre. That wasn't a one-off terror attack by Hamas. That was a regional war by the Iranian regime's proxy armies that attacked Israel practically in concert. And Israel is saying we cannot wait until the Iranian regime is 1 week away from nuclear weapons, which maybe you would say isn't imminent enough, or 20 minutes.
Well,
or
Tulsi
even
Gabbard
5
said
minutes.
3 years. 3 years.
And then she later walked back her remark in accordance with President Trump's assessment and the assessment of CENTCOM that the Iranian regime could rapidly enrich that to 90% in a matter of days if it wanted to. Israel is the country with the eyes and ears on the ground in the Middle East that found out when Bashar al-Assad was enriching uranium and trying to build a nuclear weapon.
Do you seriously
believe? The United States didn't pick up on that.
Is it seriously?
Israel picked up on that.
Is it seriously your contention that Israel right now is making the region safer?
Absolutely, Lewis.
That's despite the fact that the IAEA, despite the fact the IAEA has consistently said that armed attacks on nuclear facilities should never take place. You're the one who started your answers by quoting and citing the IAEA, and yet when I quote something else that they've said to you which is very explicit, i.e. that these attacks should never have taken place because they're too dangerous to do so, you just dismiss it. Why the incongruity?
Lewis, the only thing more dangerous than an attack on Iranian nuclear facility is an Iranian regime getting nuclear weapons. Diplomacy had already failed. The Iranians were using diplomacy as a cover to race towards nuclear weapons. The IAEA wasn't going to stop them. Its inspectors weren't even allowed to visit the Iranian regime's facilities. Israel has now, with its back against the wall, taken action to defang a regime that has sown chaos and violence and instability across the Middle East. And the fact that Syria and Lebanon now have a chance to break free from Iran's stranglehold and build new futures as sovereign states is thanks to Israel destroying the Iranian regime's proxy armies in the region, because the regional war that they launched on October 7th has backfired spectacularly in their faces, and this is the beginning of the end of that sorry chapter.
Do you understand why many people may be sceptical of your Prime Minister's claims about an imminent Iranian threat? Because he's been saying the same thing for 20 years. This has been a long-term project for him. He's the boy who cried wolf.
Lewis, do you need a reminder of the number of times Israel has reportedly eliminated Iranian nuclear scientists? Do you need a reminder of the number of cyber attacks?
He's been saying that Iran's been on the verge, but he's been saying Iran's been on the verge of obtaining a nuclear weapon for 20 years, and it has never actually achieved it. So why should we believe him now?
Of course it hasn't. Of course it hasn't,
yes.
Because Israel has been successful in sabotaging the Iranian nuclear program.
And indeed, there was a diplomatic effort with the JCPOA.
With the famous Stuxnet effort, and with the assassinations of Iranian nuclear scientists. The Iranian regime, as it is, Lewis, 60% highly enriched uranium is 99% of the way there to weaponized uranium. American intelligence said a year ago that the Iranian regime could weaponize that at multiple facilities in a matter of days at a time of its choosing. And the IAEA has run out of diplomatic language to express concern about the nuclear weapons program the Iranian regime has been running inside IRGC bases deep underneath mountains.
Well, if Iran turns around and says, I'll tell you what, Israel, we'll give up on our nuclear program when you give up the nuclear weapons that everybody knows you possess, would Israel agree to that?
I don't think the Iranian regime is in any position to be making demands right now. The Iranian regime had a demand. That demand was death to Israel and death to America.
But can you understand from their point of view?
Have said no.
But can you understand from their point of view? You consider Iran having nuclear weapons to be a profound threat to Israel, which of course it is. Do you understand that the Iranian psychological response would be exactly the same? That they think Israel having nuclear weapons is a profound threat to them, and so on this goes.
Lewis, Israel and Iran had peace until 1979. There were direct flights between Tel Aviv and Tehran. Israeli and Iranian football players played against each other at international matches. Everything changed when Iran was hijacked by a fundamentalistic, totalitarian, theocratic dictatorship whose open goal is death to Israel and death to America, and decided to enslave their own people and enslave the region in order to advance that nihilistic vision of the destruction of the state of Israel. This isn't about security. This is about a theocratic dictatorship that is determined to destroy the only democracy and the only Jewish state in the region. And the United Kingdom and other Western powers should be saying thank you.
Well, of course, the only reason, of course, there are any inspectors in Iran at all is because it's part of the nuclear non-proliferation treaty that your own country is not signatory to. Can you understand why many people just see a profound hypocrisy here?
Lewis, can you understand how people see an absolute hypocrisy in the Iranian regime waging a war of aggression against Israel through Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, chanting death to Israel, using nuclear talks as a cover for saying that Israel must be eradicated, and then claiming that it was the victim of an act of aggression? Do you understand when you zoom out here that the Iranian regime has been trying to dominate the Middle East in order to advance its goal of destroying the only democratic country in the region? This isn't about security, Lewis. This is about a fundamentalist, theocratic dictatorship with many supporters.
There are many who would look at Israel at the moment.
Be very concerned.
There are many who might look at the Middle East at the moment and think and argue that there's one country trying to dominate it, and it's Israel.
Lewis, Israel is a country 1/80th the size of Iran with a population of 10 million.
With nuclear weapons,
Israel doesn't have the ability. Lewis, Israel is a tiny country, and I would surprise you and all of your listeners when I tell you there is nothing more that Israelis want than to be left the hell alone. Israel did not ask for the Iranian regime to surround it with a ring of fire of proxy armies armed to the teeth with ballistic missiles in order to destroy this country. But that was the Iranian regime's plot, Lewis. Death to Israel was not a slogan. It was a policy. And the October 7th massacre was the opening salvo of the Iranian regime's regional war against Israel. Israel doesn't want to
October the 7th, a profound failure of Israeli intelligence, of course. Those same intelligence agencies you're now asking us to believe in credit with regards to Iran. One question, a final question about the UK's position. The UK is now calling for de-escalation. You know, Keir Starmer has said that. Your response to that?
This is not the time to throw the Iranian regime a lifeline. The Iranian regime was closer than it had ever been to nuclear weapons and is now more vulnerable than it has ever been. President Trump is saying Iran should choose peace, and I think the United Kingdom should be saying we're not going back to the world that existed before October 6th. Iran must end its policy of aggression. No more death to America, death to Israel, death to England. It's time for peace.
Would peace involve the cessation of illegal settlements in the West Bank and a cessation of the war in Gaza? Might that help Israel get to peace as well?
Peace would mean the Iranian regime stopping being committed to death to Israel and building the weapons to bring death to Israel.
You don't think Israel's got any role to play in any of that? You don't think that Israel itself could do things that could generate peace? It's not all about Iran, though, is it, Elon? I just asked you about something separate to Iran. I was asking you about the West Bank and the settlements there and asking you about Gaza, which are separate. Do you not think that it might help guarantee Israeli peace and security over the long term if a settlement were to be found in those places?
as part of the Iranian regime abandoning its war of aggression against Israel and calling off its proxies,
It always
the war in
sounds like
Gaza
someone
will
else's
end.
fault. It always sounds like someone else's fault.
Lewis,
Has Israel
it's a
got no...
theocratic dictatorship.
I don't
whose
dispute
official
that.
slogan is death to Israel.
I don't dispute that, but that's I don't dispute that. I don't dispute that. What I'm saying is that Israel's own actions, many people would argue, in the continued illegal settlements in the West Bank and its continuing prosecution of a war without end in Gaza, which is terrorizing the population there, and many people have argued many have been starved. Israel is trying to starve them into submission. Does nothing to make Israel more secure over the long term, let alone the moral imperative of the effect on the people in those places.
Lewis, Israel is more secure than it has been in a long time because it has vanquished the proxy armies that the Iranian regime built with the intent of invading Israel and destroying this country. The war with Iran has nothing to do with what's going on in Gaza because the Iranian regime has been openly sworn to Israel's destruction since the Islamic Revolution of 1979. And this is the time to demand that the Iranian regime end its terribly destructive policy of racing towards weapons of mass destruction and dominating the Middle East in pursuit of its vision of destroying the state of Israel. We had peace with Iran before the Islamic Revolution of 1979, and I can only hope it's only a matter of time till we...
So I'm not going to spend too much time sharing my thoughts on this because, honestly, I don't know about you guys, but to me that video really spoke for itself. Every time Lewis pushed back and referenced the same international body that Alon himself had cited earlier, suddenly Alon didn't want to accept it anymore. Whenever the conversation turned to accountability, it always seemed to become someone else's responsibility. And if you look at where things stand right now, as I'm recording this video, within the last few hours, Iran has reportedly retaliated and carried out strikes on